Hello everyone, welcome to Module 4. Um, I'm sure that you've gone through Module 3 now, and gradually we're already at the middle of the course, and I'm glad that you made it to this point. In Module 3, we are seeing about how to use the industrial sewing machine, how to wheel your bobbin, how to work on your tension, and of course, the most exciting one that everyone was talking about, the SPI. The SPI. Yes, I'm sure by now you know and understand what SPI means. And so this module is a continuation of module 3. You notice that module 3 stopped where we were just drawing the lines for the fabric. So we're going to continue that in this module. Okay, so by now I believe that you all will have your fabric pieces where we drew some of the things that we drew and the ones that we cut. And in this module, I'm going to be showing you, in this particular lesson, I'm going to be showing you what we're going to be doing with them. So the goal of working with this is to help you learn and master how to sew different kind of lines on your garments. Okay, different kind of lines on your garment. So we're going to start with let's start with this one. We need to know how to join accurately. We need to know how to join exactly. Okay, exactly. So we'll start with the pieces. Remember I said this is practical. We have entered into the practical aspect, so everybody has to do this. Okay, so we add 4 pieces. If you check the module 3, you know how we came about this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 pieces together. I want to join this back as 4 equal parts. Okay, joining them, seam lines, aligning. Some of these things that we are showing you here is what you need when you start making a full garment. Sometimes we skip this process when we learn and just go ahead to sew full garments, and so we do not even understand the basics, and that's why you are here. Okay, so you want to understand how to join seam allowances together, how to align seam lines together. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, 2 pieces. Most times you come about things like this when you are maybe joining your back piece together. The back will usually be divided into two. Let's say you're making a gown, there's a joining on your waist, then there's one part of the back, the other part of the back. So let's assume this is the upper part of the back. So I want to join by ½ inch allowance. So if you get the instruction and say join by ½ inch allowance, or join by 1 inch allowance, or join by whatever allowance, okay, ideally the ideal allowance, if you're doing in inches, the standard allowance is ½ inch. The standard allowance is ½ inch. Okay, and then if you are using cm, the standard allowance is 1 cm. Please take note of that. ½ inch standard seam allowance, for side seam. Then for, in fact, even for anything, then for your, if you're using cm, 1 cm is even smaller than ½ inch. Okay, so but I mean, in Africa, Nigeria, for example, where we're shooting this, you realize a lot of people use more than ½ inch for their side. You see people using 1.5, using 2 inches, using 3 inches. The effect of that is it gives a bulk on the side of your garment, and that way it doesn't make the garment relax on the client's body. Okay, people do this because they will say that, oh, my client said I should add enough allowance just in case they add weight. I remember someone once told me that when you do that, you are shortchanging yourself, because what you are telling the customer is, don't come and sew from me. Okay, when you increase in size, if you make a cloth from me 1 year ago, that cloth you should still, when you add weight, just lose it by the side and wear. Unlike when you buy garments in boutique, there's almost no allowance, because even the 1 cm, they've weaved it up. So if it is not your size, when you wear it and you add weight after a while, you just have to buy another cloth. If you love it very well, buy a bigger size. So it keeps the boutique owner in business. However, we would of course know that there are peculiarities when it comes to working with clients in different parts of the world. So I would say that even if you had allowance, at most 1 inch or maximum 1.5. Okay, at most 1 inch or maximum, which is not even the standard, maximum 1.5. Say you are doing bespoke and you feel like, okay, this person, no matter how much size they are adding or how much weight they are adding, if they had weight that exceeds the 1.5 allowance that you added, 1.5 inch allowance you added, please let them make another garment. Okay, let them make another garment. But if you want to do something that is standard, internationally accepted, your standard seam allowance is half inch. If you are using cm, is 1 cm. Okay, so in this case we are going to be using inches, and we are just holding by half inch. So if you are going to sew, you take your measuring tape and you place from the edge of your fabric to where your stitch line would be. Okay, that is where you measure your seam allowance. All right, so you have this. I'm going to put my fabric in here. So for example, if I put it like this, when I measure my half inch, I'm aligning the two fabric pieces together. When I measure my half inch, I have to put my fabric, you see where my needle is, right? This is my needle part. This is my needle. So my needle is what will create the stitch line. So it means that when I'm aligning my fabric, it has to be exactly, I can't do measure half inch like this and start sewing here. This is where my stitch line will be. Okay, so it has to be arranged and aligned to the needle part. So I have half inch into the middle, in between. It's like in between this um presser foot, and then you can hold your thread like this and put your needle in for a start. Okay, you can put your needle in for a start just to hold the fabric down for you. You want to also confirm that you have exactly half inch. Now what you want to do here is to ensure that everything you sew from beginning to the end does not exceed your half inch. So if it requires you measuring all the way, please go ahead. Some people like to mark. I would say that if you would mark, please use something that will clean off. Don't use a chalk that will remain permanent. So even though you are doing this on the wrong side of your fabric, you still don't want the wrong side to look very nasty. Okay, so the best is maybe you keep marking, you keep measuring, or you use a chalk that is erasable, like the it's erasable chalk, or you get a throat plate like this that has seam allowance. So if you look at this line, okay, is my half inch line. So if I want to sew, it means that I will not let my fabric exceed this line. I'll just keep looking at that point to ensure that my fabric does not exceed there, so that I can sew. So I wouldn't have to measure, because truly when you keep measuring like this, it takes time. It makes your sewing very slow. Alternatively, you also train your eyes to sew straight line and sew accurate seam allowances. All right, so now that I have that, I'm going to do what we call a back stitch. Okay, you create your back stitch from here. So I just pressed it as I was sewing and then release it immediately. Now you don't want to have an extremely long back stitch, because that is not good enough. So your back stitch should just be like 3 stitches to 5 stitches before you return back. The back stitch is used to reinforce your thread so that it doesn't lose. Okay, the thread doesn't lose. It's very important for the beginning and end of your sewing. Okay, so you might want to go ahead again, and so you notice that the fabric here is not really straight. That's why you have that. So but I'm going to still follow my half inch. So sometimes you can also use your finger to keep holding it, and then slowly you just keep moving. Ensure that your fabrics are aligning. I'm also trying to ensure that I'm just holding, like, so you notice that for me I was not measuring, but for you maybe you're just starting out, you could actually measure. But what the concept I'm using to ensure that I'm having a straight line is I'm ensuring that the fabric doesn't go in more to this side and it doesn't go out more to this side, so that the line I started with is the line I finish with. Okay, and holding it, remember to back stitch, just a little bit of back stitch, and always remember to cut out hanging threads. If not, you are not going to have a neat work. Okay, so you see that what I have on this is a straight line. You can see it's a straight line. Okay, and then you also want to open to be sure that your your stitches were great. So if it was not great, if I open like this, it might also be pulling out. The stitch are meant to hold two fabric pieces together. Okay, so this is great. Now remember what we are trying to do. We are trying to sew four fabrics together. Okay, so instead of saying after I'm done with this, you now come and sew this, no, it's wrong. Attach two pieces together, go ahead and attach another two pieces together. Now I want to also confirm. Okay, great. So right side facing right side, repeat the same thing. Can you see that? So I hold down my thread, do a back stitch. Look at the back stitch, this place. I'm not pressing the back stitch here. I'm moving forward and do a back stitch and go back again. Can you see that? Run straight. Now another advantage of running straight without having to measure is, and this really even helps when you are cutting. So when you're cutting, ensure that your fabric is actually cut on a straight line if it was meant to be cut on a straight line. Cut on a curve if it was meant to be cut on a curve. So having cut your fabric on a straight line helps to ensure that your seam allowance is accurate. But if it is not on a straight line, let's say your fabric was slanted at the point of cutting, the truth, and of course you've added seam allowance, that means if it's slanted, it had taken out some part of the seam allowance. So what we do in that case is just to start the half inch from here and then ensure to maintain a straight line. Okay, so now I would say that this one I'm doing, don't do it first. Okay, we're going to work on sewing straight lines on this piece. So when you've mastered that art, it will help you when you are joining this. Okay, it will help you when you are joining this. So don't sew this one first when you are doing your own. So I have this, I can open up now. Ideally you're supposed to go and iron. So this is longer because the fabric is obviously longer. So you're supposed to go and iron. If you're sewing an actual garment, you open your seams. Of course, you know that you've watched the module for ironing. You open your seam and then you press flat. Okay, so same thing with this side. You open your seam, please press it. Okay, no matter how small the fabric is, please press it. So when you are done pressing, you come right side facing right. By now it's very easy to identify your right side. The wrong side is where you have the joining. The right side is where you just have like the stitch, the seam line. So now remember, we still want to join. We are joining back to form a square. We are not forming rectangle. Okay, so you now, if you start sewing by joining this one, so your half inch, you would be wrong and you would not have paid attention to details. So what you're supposed to do is, you see this joining that you have here, you are also going to align it with the second joining. So this one, this joining here, okay, this seam here, you place it over this seam here in a way that they are aligned together. Can you see that? In a way that they are aligned. That's the first thing you need to ensure aligns, in a way that they are aligned together. And you will grab a pin. Okay, you grab a pin just to secure them together before you start sewing. Ensure that they don't shift. After you're done pinning, you want to go back to check and see that they are aligning. Okay, and then you can now go back while still ensuring your seam lines, your seam allowance are open. You want to go back now and you are also sewing by half inch. Remember, it's half inch. Okay, so that means that's why you need to always have your tape on your neck, the measuring tape always on your neck. And then okay, can you see that? I'll measure again just in case my hand shifted. It didn't shift. Remember to back stitch, then go ahead. But before I go ahead, put the needle in. Before I go ahead, I'm also just trying to check, open out the seam allowance. They need to be separate. If you don't open it out separately, one part becomes bulky on your garments because you have passed all seam allowance to now be on one side. That's why you need to open so that you balance the bulkiness. Okay, again, I'm also paying attention to be sure that the seam allowance are open. Now when I get to where the needle is, put the machine needle in, drag this pin out. You don't need it anymore. Don't sew on your needle. And even if your needle will not be on your where your machine needle would pass, it's better to just remove it when you get to the point where you use the needle to hold, because now a stitch is holding it, so you don't need it anymore. And when people don't do that, so my thread cut off. When your thread cut off like that, you want to go back. I'll show you this. You don't want to start sewing from where it cut off. You want to go back a few inches so that you reinforce, and then ensure that your needle enters the stitch line itself. Okay, so I put it down and fix my needle, my thread back. Now when I said I should remove the needle that you used to hold the two pieces together, some people would forget it there, because as you are sewing, you just stitch and you're like, oh, I'll remove it later. When you don't remove it now, what you are telling yourself is you are giving yourself an opportunity to forget it there. And imagine when you give a customer their garments and they are picking pins in the cloth, or they're so excited about how pretty it is, one moment they just wear and the thing pierce them into the very bone, into the very flesh. You can imagine how furious they would get. Okay, so always avoid things like that. So you notice that I did not backstitch the point where um I had to go back when my thread cut. That's because the reason why I went back few stitches as I sewing that period, I've reinforced the stitch, or I've reinforced the thread. So you cut that out, cut this. You also want to check if there's anything here, and then so you see that the seam allowance are open, the seam allowance are open. Okay, then you open here. You want to be sure that your lines are aligning. In fact, for me, I'll say that it's still remaining just very small, so sometimes I just use my hands to drag them down. But what I have here is almost negligible, that if you don't, in fact, if you're looking at it straight, but I feel like there's still something tiny, but it's less, in fact it's less than the smallest inch we have on a thread, on a on a tape rule. Okay, so you see the goal is that the lines are moving in together. Okay, they have to align together, nothing like this stitch coming up here and this one coming down here. No, you are not a local tailor. Okay, even local tailors don't do that. Okay, so you need to, I'm trying to cut out thread, so you go ahead now and then go and press again. You press here again so that it becomes flat. So this is for this one. Okay, if you know you've not mastered sewing straight lines, you can ignore starting with that first. Okay, so now let's move to the straight line. So for this, we're first of all trying to sew exactly on this line. So I'm going to try and just double my fabric, because this fabric is quite light. Okay, so what you are doing first is to pay attention, focus on sewing exactly on the straight line that you have drawn. All right, so I have that. My focus is on that line, so you keep looking at the line. You can back stitch, ensure that your needle doesn't exceed that line. It does not exceed that line. It does not exceed that line. Okay, so we must not see, when you're submitting your own, there must not be double lines. Now you can cut this fabric more than one, so that you repeat it. The first time you are doing it, it might not be exact like my own, so you see that you cannot see the straight line anymore. That's because I sew exactly on the straight line. But if we can see your if we can see your own line, please don't clean it all. Okay, what you have to do is cut another fabric piece, draw a straight line, sew on it. If you don't get it right, cut another fabric piece, sew on it. If you don't get it right, cut another one again. That's how you master. You keep practicing until you master it. Now when you've mastered that straight line and you sew exactly on the straight line, the next thing you want to do now is to now sew a straight line again, but this time with this one guiding you. You're not going to follow another straight line. And then this also helps us when we are sewing some certain things that we need to ensure that it is straight. All right. So this, when you look at your presser foot, for example, when you look at your presser foot, for example, you see that it looks like it has two legs. Okay. Now we are going to work with this leg, this part of the leg, align it to just be exactly by the side of our straight line. And then what you're now doing is to just focus your eyes to ensure that this line and this edge remains the same way all through as you are sewing. I'll come again. You are going to align this. You are not putting it in the middle. If it's like this is in the middle of this particular leg, let's say this is the left leg, this is the right leg. Let's just say it that way for the purpose of this class. So this right leg, if I want to sew in a way that I'm sewing something very small, I can put my existing stitch in the middle and then just keep sewing with my focus not on the needle now. My focus is on the existing stitch, maintaining it to not move or exceed being in the middle of this leg. But in a case where I want something almost like 0.5 cm or 1 cm, let's even measure what is there. When we measure what is there, I think it's quite, yeah, it's 0.5 cm. So from here to here is 0.5 cm. So if I want something like that, I can just put my fabric here, let this be just by the side, my existing stitch line just by the side of this. And when I'm sewing, my eyes is only looking there. My eyes is not looking at the needle, because if you put your eyes on the needle, you most likely not get a straight line. What we are trying to achieve is a straight line. Okay, so my focus is on ensuring that this place remains the same. So let's go. So I'll go ahead, do your back stitch, and then remember to focus on your focus. Tell your neighbor focus on your focus. Ooh. Now you see what we just did there? Look at this. So I'll take it back so you can see. So can you see that the lines are equal? Now I didn't, this first one I drew a line, but this second one I referenced this. But how you know it's the same is because the space between the two has to be the same. So let's go ahead now. This time we are referencing this line. Okay, this time we're referencing this line, putting it by the side and going ahead to sew. You are going to do this all the way for the entire cloth. All right, you are going to be so you in the process of doing this, what you are trying to train, you are trying to train your eyes to sew straight, to focus on one thing, and even your hands. A lot of things are being trained in this process. Okay, you are training a lot of things in this process. You are training your hands to hold your fabric firm. You see I'm not dragging the fabric at the back. Okay, you do this with either you're using manual machine, you're using tabletop machine, whatever industrial machine, whatever machine that you are using. Okay, this is not machine based. Don't say, oh, your own is straight because you are using industrial machine. No, this is not machine based. Okay, so you keep going again. This time you see we're referencing this one. My focus is to ensure that this does not go in. I'm only looking here. I'm not even looking at the needle. I'm looking here. Okay, and I go again. And then because this is the beginning, you have to go on a slow speed. Then by the time you are done with this, when you are doing the second fabric, because I need you to do as many fabrics as possible, when you are doing the second fabric, you can increase your speed so that you are not sewing in a very slow way. Okay, you are not learning to sew in a slow way. It doesn't help, because fashion itself is time consuming. So you must also, while you are learning, you must also learn how to sew very fast. So you see now I'm referencing this line. I'm referencing this line. So we go again. All right. So you see that this my stitch has almost entered in. So I can be sure when I take it off, that particular place might not be straight. So even before finishing the stitch, I can know if I actually sew straight or not. When you sew your own, if it's not straight, lose it, because what you are submitting is a straight line. Okay, what you are submitting is a straight line. So let's do like 2 or 3 more before we move to the next one. But when you are doing heels, you are feeling the entire cloth. You keep referencing the previous line, keep sewing, and even yourself, you must look at it and tell yourself, yes, I think all my lines were straight. Okay, you must tell yourself, I think, or if it was not straight, cut another piece of fabric and sew again, 6 by 6. It shouldn't be less than 6 by 6. Okay, so you keep sewing till you fill up the entire place. Till you fill up the entire place. What you will see at the end is that the first few ones might not be so straight, but the last few ones will be straight, because by now your hand, at the beginning your hand was still adjusting, at the middle you were trying to master it, at the end you've already gotten the hang of it. Okay, so don't try to be very smart and say, I'm not going to cut 6 by 6 so I don't have to sew a lot of things. No, there's a reason why we're saying you should do this, and that's because you understand the mechanism of how sewing straight works, and these things needs to be done. So when it's done, the exact frequency, the exact quantity, you would see that it helps you. In fact, even after this lesson and you are done with this assessment, you should also try it on your own. Okay, you would see, if I had time to finish up everything, you will see that even for me, the last few ones will be straighter than the first few ones that I have done. Okay, you see it, whether you're a master or you're a beginner or you're an intermediate designer, these things work. At the beginning of anything you are doing, you're trying to master it. It's like when a child is trying to walk for the first time. He has in him the ability to walk, but he's trying to walk for the first time. So the first few times he's going to fall, but he's still going to come up again. But by the time he's doing this, like the 20th time, he walks as if he was born walking. That's how it is. So it's important for you to master it that way. So we're going to just um leave this like this. But for you, remember I said that you will keep sewing, referencing the previous line, keep sewing, keep sewing, keep sewing like that. All right, so this is for the straight line. When you are done, you send a picture and you submit. All right, so now we've done we've done this one where we are sewing 4 equal parts, and then the straight line. We're going to move to the zigzag line. So we're moving to the zigzag line now. For this zigzag line, it helps you to understand control. It teaches you on control, because there are some things you want to sew on your garments, depending on the design, that's maybe unlike the straight line, you have to stop at a certain point and then pivot back to another point. So this really helps you to master that. Okay, it shows you control, it helps you to know how to stop, how to operate your machine in a way that you can stop it. All right, so for the zigzag, it's still going to be the same way we did for the straight line, but this time the lines we are following is different. So we're going to come here, our starting point. Remember to first of all hold out your thread. Okay, when you hold your thread, then you let your needle go into the exact line that you want it to go. Yes, and good parts, we are tracing, we're just using our machine to trace. So I'll do a back stitch. Also, I doubled my fabric because my fabric is light. If you're using a light fabric, if you don't have enough to double, you can just put a paper stay underneath. So I'm going to be sewing now. When I sew one, I stop there. I'm looking at where that stops. You should not sew and then your stitches will exceed the line that you drew. No. So I lift up my presser foot. Okay, I lift up my presser foot and pivot the fabric, pivot it to the line where I want it to sew, and then I keep going. Okay, I keep going, I keep going. Now I'm doing this slowly because I assume that the class is for beginners, but when you become an advanced designer, you should be able to run it straight. Then when you get close to where you need it to not exceed, you slow down. So I raise presser foot again, pivot. Can you see? So you see here, I missed out this line, but also I could see where I was sewing that particular line I drew wasn't straight, but my stitches are actually straight. If you look at my stitches, they're actually straight. That's why you can see like the shadow of the line there. Okay, so even though you are following the line, you want to ensure that what you are sewing is straight. So as I'm going, stopping, I have to let this extend a bit more. Okay, so you pivot again. Now that particular line is also not straight, but I'm going to let my stitch follow a straight line. Okay, when I get to that point, I raise, put the needle. You see the needle remains. If you let the needle come up, your fabric will just move out. So the needle is what holds it. My presser foot is raised up, I pivot again, and then I'm sewing. Okay, so one more, yes, and then I also continue with my straight line. So so that you don't have this case where the line you drew is not straight, you can use a ruler to draw that line. You know, I use my free hand to just draw it. You can use a ruler to draw yours. Please use a ruler, so that, because some of you now would not so straight and then now use excuse that, oh, it's because I use my hand. Okay, so use a ruler when you are drawing yours. Remember that when you are drawing the line, just ensure you have three sharp edges. So that means when you have three sharp edges on one side, you have two sharp edges on the other side. So you see what I have here. You see what I have here. It doesn't exceed. 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 You must show that you are in control. Okay, you must show that you are in control. So you must show that you are in control. Now let's move on to the second one. Now this time we are also sewing same techniques. Put it by the edge and ensure that that's where you are focusing on. You know that when I was sewing this one now, I was focusing on the needle to sit on my line, the line that I drew. But this time I am focusing on the side and ensuring it doesn't exceed. So I'll do my back stitch and then follow. You have to pay maximum attention. Okay, now remember that I don't have a drawn part here, but I want the edge to be the same. So I have to ensure that my needle stops on a straight line with this. So I move. Can you see that? Can you see that? In fact, I think I still need to move one more. Or you try and check if when you sew it's going to give you a straight line. I don't think it will. So you see, this is how you learn accuracy and precision. So I move one more stitch. So when I move one more stitch, I see that it's like I'm using my eyes to draw a straight line from this all the way here. If it actually gives me an accurate straight line, it means that I am at the apex, the right apex here. The previous one where I pivot was not the right apex. Okay, so you keep going. When you get here as well, you want to be sure that you are not sewing too much. So when I go like this, see the too much space I have, that means it's wrong. So I go in, I go one more stitch, then pivot. Yes, this is correct. This is correct. Can you see that? So you keep sewing again. Now you understand what we are trying to do. Pivot. Is it giving me a straight line? No, it looks like this is going to enter in. So I'll go back, and while I'm going back, I'm also trying to use my eyes to draw a straight line here. If not, if I go back and pivot like this, I will have sewn a wrong thing. So I would ensure that I use my eyes to pivot here. So just one more stitch, then go back. Yes, draw a straight line with your eyes. It's exact. Now I'm sewing. So I do this pivot, check here, I think it's correct. So I keep going. So you see that pivot. Now this time we got it right. So you keep going, and then I can do a back stitch. Okay, so can you see what we have here now? Can you see what we have here now? Can you see that? Yes, sharp edges aligning, sharp edges aligning, sharp edges aligning. Now let's go ahead and do another one. Remember I said that when you start the first 2, 3, 4, 5, you might not get it. It might not be so smooth and straight. In fact, I would say that you try all your tries. You can put first, you can cut like 3 for each shape. Cut 3 fabrics. Okay, then you write first attempt, second attempt, third attempt. I'm sure that your third attempt is going to be so beautiful, but I need to see your progress. So when you snap the picture, ensure that you are snapping all the 3 attempts in one picture. So for this zigzag, you are putting on 3 attempts, writing first attempt, second attempt, third attempt, okay, and you're snapping all. So we can see boldly that this person has actually mastered what she's doing with the way that she's sewing in all of her attempts. You're going to enjoy it. So let's move on to do some more. This really, as you keep practicing this, it actually helps your hands and your legs. In fact, the way you move the machine and you are able to stop at a certain point, it helps you master control. Okay, it helps you master. You'll be so surprised how this thing that looks like, oh, why am I just sewing lines, can help you become a very good tailor. Okay, so let's go. By now we are already knowing the count for the for the stitches that will give us the right apex. Okay, I go in. So you see, unlike the previous one when we're moving and going back, it looks like we're already trying or getting to master it. Now ensure that your apex is correct as well, because if it is not correct, it will affect every other one that you'll be sewing. Okay, and then, oh, I forgot to also say that you must ensure that your stitch per inch has been set to 10 stitches. So everything I'm doing here has been set to 10 stitches, even the previous one. Everything I've done from beginning of this module, I used 10 stitch per inch. My machine has been set to 10 stitch per inch. So ensure that you have also set your machine to 10 stitch per inch. Everybody should use 10 stitch per inch, okay? Oh, that was close, but I mean, we're just going to let it go. So you keep going. I'm going to do one more after this, just one more after this. I can't wait to see your practicals. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see your practicals. Okay, so let's just do one more, but for you, you are going to fill it up. You already know you're going to fill it up. I don't want to take so much time. If I do try to fill it up here, it's going to make the video very long, so that's why I'm not filling up. But what I'm doing is just what you are going to do all through. Okay, is what you're going to do all through. When you keep doing it, it gets interesting. At the beginning, it might look like, oh, but you know, when you keep going, it gets interesting. Trust me. So you see, this helps your even you master your leg. In fact, if you, I'm currently using the wheel to do some stopping. One of the trainings I did, I mean, the woman will not even allow you use the wheel. She'll tell you use your leg. Your leg must learn how to control. And truly, if you can try to use your leg, it will really help you. It will really help you when you're sewing. You'll be so shocked as to how much control you have with the sewing machine, especially something that is this fast. Okay, so you see that. So when you're doing yours, you will continue all the way to the end. Don't stop like this though, all the way to the end. Okay, so now let's move to the curved one. So this curved one also helps you with control, and now you already know how we do it. You are going to start with tracing out your stitch with the your mark. So remember to back stitch. um you trace out your stitch, back stitch. This also helps with control. Okay, but this time it's not control for sharp edges, it is control for curved areas, and you're going to be working with curved areas a lot. For example, your neckline sometimes could be a curved area. Your armhole is the joining between your sleeve and your shoulder. Okay, so you need to work with curved areas there. So you see that I will need to pivot, and then so you just press machine a bit, pivot again, press the machine a bit, pivot, raise. So when you pivot, you have to raise. You can't squeeze your fabric when you're pivoting. You have to raise the presser foot, and then you use your legs to sew the areas where put your needle in. You pivot, raise your presser foot up, and you sew. Put your needle in, pivot. Okay, you have to keep looking at it. Pivot. You see, I'm using my legs mostly for the control. Avoid using the wheel, that is the wheel of the machine. If not, you would not master it. So when I say wheel, don't use wheel to sew everything, because this is curvy. Now say, hey, let me just use my hand, it gives me better control. No, you've already nullified what we are trying to achieve. Okay, your leg should do most of the work. Only extremely few ones should the wheel do. Okay, only extremely few ones. Your leg should master how to, you see that I'm only touching the wheel when I need to put the needle in and pivot. Your leg should master how to stop and how to continue. So even if you want to run 2 stitches, your leg should know how to sew 2 stitches alone. If you need to sew 5 stitches, your leg should master how to sew 5 stitches. You know, you can even practice that and say, I want to sew 5 stitches. So you can go on the machine and count. You use your leg to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I remember when I was learning stitches, that was some things that we did. You go on the machine, and then in fact you use a paper, so the needle would put in points. You have to count 5. Maybe I'll show us so, because it's a great thing for you to also know. I think we should have also even seen it before this class. So, but it's not a problem. I would show us. It helps you with control. So you see what we have here. All right, this is what we have for this. We are going to go ahead and also do the other one. Now somebody is saying, hey God, when I'm doing my own, how am I going to get it done? It looks like we are going from easy to hard. No, the reason why you're going from easy is because when you do, for example, when you do this one, I expect you to do 3 of it. Okay, everybody is doing 3 of it. So when you do this one straight line, fill up the entire place. Make sure that the lines are equal to each other, they are parallel to each other. Fill up the entire place. Do another one, fill up the entire place. Do another one, fill up. You would have run almost this line. Now for me, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you are sure that I've not even gotten to half. So let's say you have 20 straight lines. If you do 3 of this, you would have done 60 straight lines. That means you have spent some minutes sewing 60 straight lines. That would help you and improve you when you are sewing this. Okay, and by the time you are done, because here you are also learning control to stop here. That control that you are learning now helps you when you come to this. So you see that's why we're not doing this one first. That control helps you when it comes. That's why I was even saying that when you want to sew your own, don't do this first. What I recommend is to start with this. Do all your 3, indicate first attempt, second attempt, third attempt, then go ahead to do this. By doing this, you've learned how to sew a straight line, because you just finished sewing about 60 straight lines. Okay, so you've learned how to do this. Once you are done with that, you now move on to this. You also fill up and also do 3 of these. Okay, for this one, you keep doing until you master. If at your first attempt you are able to get this to align, then no problem. But if it doesn't align, cut another one, sew another one. Then the first one you write first attempt, second attempt, third attempt, so that we know how well you have progressed. Okay, for this one as well, you do 3 attempts. So even if you get it right, do 3 attempts. Okay, then let's continue with this. You are aligning the line to the edge, just what we have been doing. Okay, we are also learning control. Remember, only use the wheel when you are trying to push the needle in. Okay, I just touched the wheel because I'm trying to push the needle in. You must know how to use your leg to do these things. Only the foot pedal is what you are using to sew. Don't use the balance wheel. Okay, you all know what I'm calling balance way, right? This, don't use it and be pulling it like this to sew all the way and say I cannot use my leg for the curve. I have not learned um how to control, or I've not learned how to take charge of the machine. So that's why you're in this class. That's why you are here. Ask yourself, why are we here? Why are we here? So that is why you are here. Can you see that? You might, there's something, even I just missed a particular one stitch actually went in wrongly. Mm. So you see that place is fast, but it has gone wrong. So you might have to lose it if you go through that. You see where I ran very fast. It was too close. So you do that. We can do like two more. So because as this is going in more, the curve reduces. Even though I think can still go in more. So basically you curve this way, okay? But it helps you to, the goal is to help you ensure that you can sew through a curve area. All right, so let's go to the last one that we have, which is the spiral. Okay, we had the starting point, right? Which is this. So you put your needle in your starting point. I'm also trying to double my fabric. So this is also similar. See how I took it back because it exceeded. This is similar to what we just did. Okay, this time control. This one requires quite a number of control. All right, control. You write control. You are not using the wheel, you are using your leg. You only use the wheel. Now you only use the wheel when you want to put the needle in. Now I've exhausted the line I drew, so the guide now would be that this edge here aligns with this. Okay, it's just right beside it. So I'm going to start walking that way. So that means my eyes, where will my eyes be now? Where will my eyes be now? My eyes will be here. I'm not looking at this place again because there's no guide here. My eyes will be here now. Okay, so this might require that you are just sewing like 2 stitches. See what I told you about knowing how to just, ooh, you see that was fast. I was talking, my mind was not there. Okay, how you are able to, you know, count the number of stitches you make. It's possible. Okay, it's possible. So I'm going to just go through this like 2 to 3 times. 2 to 3 times. All right. As the circle becomes wider, you won't have to be stopping too much. Now I've gone too much around that area. Can you see it? My eyes is here. My eyes is here. I hope you're enjoying the class. So far as we're sewing this, tell me what has been your best lesson so far between all the modules from the first module to this module. What's the best lesson? What's the best lesson? I hope you can remember all the lessons from each module. Some modules have 3 to 4 lessons, some have 2 lessons, some have 1 lesson. What's your favorite lesson? What's the topic of your favorite lesson? Write it in the comment. Let me see. If you don't know the title of the lessons, that means you have not been paying attention. Oh. If you can't remember the title exactly, at least you know what was said in the lesson. So just type it in the comments. Okay. So you see now I can move more. Before, when I was going around here, it was just like 2 stitches at a time, 3 stitches at a time. But now it's more because the circle is becoming bigger. But control, you know when to stop the pedal. Okay, you know when to stop the pedal, so that when you are giving a garment to sew, you don't over stitch, then you stitch across board. No, that is not nice. Can you see? And remember, your legs do the job, not the balance wheel. Your leg does the job. As you're listening to this now, you're practicing, I want you to hammer within your ears or in your ears that your leg is what is doing the job. Don't use the balance wheel. By now you already know what I'm calling balance wheel. Nobody should ask me what is balance wheel again. Don't use the balance wheel to sew. You're only using the balance wheel. I think I've done more than 2. Let me just finish this one. But there's no finishing, because even if you keep going, you just keep going. Maybe I'll just find a way to stop somewhere. But for you, you are going around, you exhaust the entire fabric until when your fabric gets here. I mean, when your stitch line gets here, that's when you stop. Okay, so let me just so I was saying that your balance wheel is only meant to help you drop the needle inside your fabric. That's the only thing you use the balance wheel for. That's the only thing you're supposed to use the balance wheel for. Okay, so depending on the kind of fabric you're using as well, it might start giving you something like this. It's fine, but it shouldn't be too big. It shouldn't be poking too high. Okay, shouldn't be poking too high. The reason is because we are sewing in a circular form, and you know that that's sewing in that circular form means we are already sewing along the bias area, so it might cause the fabric to stretch a bit and distort the shape a bit. So it's fine, but don't let it go too high, like it's coming it now looks like an art. It's very high. No, it shouldn't be. Okay, I think I've also explained. Probably it's just this sewing in a curvy way is actually so sweet that I keep forgetting where I want to stop. Well, it's time to stop. Let's just find somewhere to stop. Okay, let me just take it down so that so I'm not tempted to continue. And you see that it also looks nice. Okay, it also looks nice. That's why I just keep going. So this is it. Right side, wrong side. Can you see it? So, but for you, you are not taking it down, you are going all the way. And you see that I'm trying so much to ensure that the distance between here and here is same between here and here, same between here and here, same between here and here, same between, like that. So if you don't remember how I started again, just reverse the video. Okay, so at the end of the day, this is what we have been able to sew. This spiral, this curve, the zigzag, the straight line. Okay, the straight line, and then the joining of the 4 equal parts. Okay, so that's 5. So when you're doing yours, remember I said you're doing 3 of these: attempt 1, attempt 2, and attempt 3. Your 3 attempts, even if you get everything right, create 3 attempts. Then this one as well, 3 attempts. This one as well, 3 attempts. Now you can make your own curve bigger so that you don't start getting sharp points when you're at the third stitch. You can make your curves really big, but you're not doing C. So if I say do really big, don't just draw C for me. No, at most maybe one S instead of two. So you can do one S, okay? One S, but it's big, and then the circular motion. Remember, your fabric is 6 by 6, should be cut 6 by 6 inches, and don't forget this. So three attempts, three attempts, three attempts, three attempts. This one you keep attempting until when you get it to align. So if it aligns at the first point, I think you should do three attempts for this too, because if it aligns at the first point, maybe you got lucky. But it's not luck when it happens 3 times. Okay, it means it's mastery when it happens 3 times. So you have to also do this 3 times as well. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson as much as I did. Now let's get into the next lesson. This lesson we'll be learning about top stitch and under stitch. So when you look at this beautiful um, blouse, it's a buba blouse. This is the neckline. You would realize that you see something here. It's attached with a facing. So the facing is used to turn the raw edges of your neckline, your armhole. But in this case, we're working with a neckline. Okay, so the facing is used. You can also use lining. So if you want that a full lining, use a full lining. If you want a facing, you can just cut a little bit, okay, to turn it. So when you look at this on the right side, you cannot see on any thread, but on the wrong side there is a particular thread that you can see that runs through. Okay, can you see that black stitch line? That stitch now that is not showing on the right side is called an understitch. It's called an understitch. It is used to hold the seam allowance to the lining or facing. Now as I open now, you see two stitch lines. Okay, you are seeing two stitch lines. Here is one. This one stitch line here is what held this facing and this main fabric together. We held it together, and then this second one is the understitch. Okay, so that is why you are only seeing it on the facing, because you will push your allowance towards the facing or the lining if you are using lining, and you stitch on it. Okay, so I'm going to show you now how do you use, when do you use your understitch. You use it for neckline, you use it for but it doesn't show on the right side. It doesn't show on the right side. So I'm going to show you a sample of that. I've joined these two fabrics together by half, so most times you find an under stitch or a top stitch around where you have two fabric piece joined together. So let's assume this is going to be my lining or my facing, and this is my main fabric. Of course, you would press out your seam, then you ensure that your seam allowance is facing this side. If I'm sewing now and my seam allowance is facing here, is wrong, because this is the right side. It should be facing either your lining or your facing, whatever it is. It should face towards that side, and you ensure that it moves out. In this case, you don't need to open out your seam like this into two. You don't need to open them out into two, because we are trying to do an under stitch. So you open, ensure that the seam allowance is facing towards your um facing or lining. And then now this is where we see, if you have been learning from, if you learned from the previous lesson, since I'm sewing here, I want to just stop stitch by to just understitch by 0.5 cm, which is the size of this leg. So what do? I will align this line, this seam line, to the edge of this allowance, and then just focus there to ensure it doesn't exceed, so I have a straight line. Okay, so you see how this everything we learned in the previous lesson comes in handy. So I'm only spreading more because I didn't press, and if I don't spread like this, it's not going to come out nice. And of course, I would also say when you're doing yours, also use a contrasting thread so that I can see your work. When I say contrasting thread, For example, in fashion, as I'm sewing a white fabric now, I should use a white thread so that my thread blends into the fabric and I do not see it. But for the purpose of the class, we are using a contrasting thread so that it is obvious for everybody to see. So when you're also doing your practicals and submitting your assignments, please use a contrasting thread so that it's so obvious for you to see the best one that you did and the ones that you need to work on. Okay, so you see now that with this is relaxed. When you turn to the right side, it has held up this allowance for me to make it relax. Can you see that? So on the wrong side you are seeing two threads, but on the right side you only see one thread. So this is what it means. So if I, even if this was meant to be my neckline or whatever it is, I'm just going to go press it like this. Okay, you are not, this is going to be the wrong side. So this is what you see on the wrong side, but on the right side this is what you see. Okay, so for top stitching is similar to understitch. So I'm just going to cut this so I can also use it. So top stitch is similar to understitch. However, the difference is that for top stitching, it is used for decorative, as a decorative um item, if I will say it that way. Like the thread is used for decoration. If you have a pair of jean, you realize that most times the side of a pair of jean trouser, for example, when you look at the side, you would see stitches on it. Okay, you see visible stitches. That's a top stitch. Okay, that is a top stitch. So it was used so that it's, just designs the garments for you. So that's what a top stitch does. So that means that you can already tell how that will be done. It means that instead of doing it on the wrong side, you are doing it on the right side. So it's just like opposite of what we did on the for the under stitch. Okay, so I'm just doing this so I can have something to sew on. So you have this. Now I want to do a top stitch on the right side. So you can open, please press or press. So if I want to do a top stitch on the right side, I could first, if I want to do two top stitch, right? I want to do two top stitch. I would come here. Now I had flipped my allowance to this side. So I'll come here and I'm going to sew very close to, I'm using this leg as a guide because this leg is permanent, it's not going anywhere. So that's why I'm always using it as a guide. I would use it in a way that it aligns this seam. So I'm going to just use something to point. This seam here aligns to the inner part here. Okay, it aligns to the inner part here. I'm using something as a guide. That's what I'm trying to do, so that my lines are straight. This is the secret to sewing straight lines when you're using something as a guide. Okay, so I'm only looking at that part and I'll continue my sewing. Can you see that? Please always remove your hand when you're getting close to the machine. Don't forget it there. Okay, so this is the first top stitch. You have to squeeze because the fabric was not pressed. Okay, now the second top stitch would be 0.5. This one is not 0.5 cm. So the second top stitch, I would align here to here so that it sews here. I will align here to this stitch. Okay, you see now that you would be creating visible straight lines after you practice this, what is being taught in this lesson. Your stitches are going to look so great that they wonder if it was a robot that created it. So can you see this? This is a top stitch. Okay, so the fabrics appear, I mean the stitches would appear. Okay, the stitches will appear, you see it is visible. Can you see it? Sometimes some people will also leave the middle and then just sew by both sides. It depends on whatever you are trying to achieve. Okay, but this is what you normally would see by the side of a pair of jean. For example, if you own a pair of jean, I want you to go and check your pair of jean, you would most likely see a top stitch. Not, it doesn't happen in all pair of jean, but you will see it in most jean trouser. You see by the side, it's just to reinforce and sometimes for decoration. You also notice that they don't even use the same color. Okay, they don't use the same color of thread so that it stands out. So can you see? So this is an a top stitch, while this is an under stitch. Okay, this is supposed to be done on the side that you don't want visible. All right, I hope you gained something. Okay, so I'll see you in the next lesson.